Tonight, we've got Firefly Farm, which is run by a mom and a son. This is Beth Tillman Brown.
Nope, I'm just a Tillman.
and Dugan, their son. There is also, do you know Van Brown? Some of you do. He is not here because he's elsewhere, but that makes sense, doesn't it? So today we have Beth and Dugan, and they're going to tell you about their farm and what they're doing and what we can learn about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Lee. We appreciate being here. I know some of you here, and we'll probably carry on like we're just having a conversation. I think that might make the most sense. We started our farm because my husband, Dugan's father, had Lyme disease so badly that nobody could understand how he remained alive. We could find organic vegetables that we trusted as being truly organic, but we could not find what we consider to be extremely nutrient-dense, very carefully raised meat. So Dugan and I sort of looked at each other, scratched our heads, found a piece of property up in North Stonington, and decided that we would start raising some animals that would meet our specifications and help Mr. Van get well. So we were privileged to have Craig Floyd as one of our friends from a long time ago. We'd followed him and his farm, Footsteps Farm, and he took us under his wing, and we started off with 10 tri-heritage pigs from him. When you're going into farming, and I had not been around farm animals since I was a child. My father was an animal nutritionist, so I had been heavily involved with the vet medicine group at Oklahoma State University, and just going with him to various feed mills and feedlots, and he was involved in everything from the agronomist side on up for animals. So fast forward a long time, law degrees, and here we are. So we got our first 10 pigs. We did well with our first 10 pigs. So we got 15 pigs from Craig. After we had raised all of those out, we decided we would specialize in a very rare, endangered heritage breed of pig, and that is the mulefoot hog. They are descended from the Iberico ham hogs of Spain, and if you've ever read about Iberico hams, you know that they are the most expensive and most coveted hams in the world. They are out of this world as far as flavor is concerned. Good evening, Anna. So we had to go to Michigan to get mulefoots because they are truly very rare, very endangered, and we had to prove to the gentleman from whom we purchased these pigs that we could actually care for them and keep the breed alive. So fast forward again, some years later, here we were with 300 mulefoot hogs and decided we needed to cut back. So that's when we got into charcuterie. And charcuterie is any kind of sausage, dry cured meats, and things like that. So we have been making a lot of that so that we can reduce our pig herd to a slightly more manageable herd. We then were very active in the Livestock Conservancy, which is a group that began in 1974 in Vermont, specifically to track and keep heritage farm breeds alive. So we discovered the Randall, well, there's depending on which registry you want to use, they're either Randall lineback or Randall cattle. We sort of alternate between the two because we have some animals that are on one registry, and we're actually hoping to migrate over to the other registry. But at any rate, they are an old Vermont landrace breed, triple purpose, good for homesteads. So that triple purpose means meat, dairy, and draft. And the claim to fame for Randalls is that the ancestors of our cattle, 80 matched pair, pulled cannon for George Washington in the Revolutionary War. So they are an American breed with a lot of history. The animals are still used as most of the pulling oxen you see at fairs is Randall. And they are a small, short-legged animal, very barrel. We probably have some pictures we could go to. No, you're not. No, you're not. Okay, it should be under the livestock area, but at any rate. So they are a very gentle breed, extremely good mothering behaviors with the cows. The bulls are actually very, very nice animals. There's only one that we have on the farm who likes to take pot shots at the other bulls, and so we figure if he does that with the other bulls, he just might decide to do it with the humans, so we always keep our eyes on him. But the other 21 that we have are absolutely docile and wonderful.
Even the bulls?
Even the bulls, even the bulls. The bulls are great. So we also raise poultry, and our poultry is of more of the industrial breeds, but raised in a very organic, free-range, pasture-based system, so that they are constantly moving and, whoops, that's better?
Trying to make it so people can see.
Okay. So maybe we should give you a chance to look at some of these pictures. The Randalls come in 4 different color patterns. This is what I call a roan. It's a kind of a spreckledy red. There's a solid red. Then there's one that's totally black-sided, if Dugan can find one of those, probably in that group. Yeah, see the ones that are totally black-sided. And then there are the blues, which are the spreckledy black ones. So 4 basic types. The red is about a 10% recessive gene for them. So there are, the thing you have to watch for when you're dealing with these old-fashioned breeds is that you don't skew the genetics of them by going for a single trait. And we've had to discourage someone who borrows bulls of ours because they wanted to go all red. And we said, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's a 10% recessive gene. So you may not have red bulls constantly. So, and that's not the energy drink. Okay, so then oh, yes.
You just keep talking, I'm just putting up.
Okay, so the poultry, to get our feet under us raising poultry, decided to do industrial breeds, but raise them on pasture with organic feed. And I've got to tell you that when you do it that way, they don't taste anything like the mushy stuff that goes off to China to be processed and sent back to whatever grocery store they get sent to. They have a firmer flesh, they have flavor. The birds exercise, which, as you know from caged environments of industrial processing, they don't get any exercise whatsoever. So we have done Red Rangers, which are a more old-fashioned type industrial bird with long legs and not as much breast. Cornish cross, which is ubiquitous in every grocery store there is, which have the large breasts and little short legs. And if they are not properly raised, they actually can't support their own weight because the breasts are so large. We have done barred rocks, which are a Freedom Rangers, which are a four-way cross, which are between a dark and a light meat, and they've actually been very, very popular for us. But our claim to fame in poultry, in the chicken area, are our Dorkings. And Dorkings have been continuously domesticated for over 3,000 years. They were the preferred bird of the Roman Empire. And wherever the Romans conquered, these chickens were left behind. And the reason we have them as Dorkings in this country is they ended up in England in a little town called Darking, which then changed its name to Dorking. So when the settlers came here, they brought their Dorking chickens with them. They are smaller, they take a long time to grow out, but they're absolutely exquisite in their flavor. And they were the preferred birds of emperors and kings. Also, Queen Victoria refused to eat anything but Dorkings because she said they were the only chicken worth eating. We have raised broad-breasted white turkeys, which are the same type that you see in the grocery stores around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Ours, again, are on organic feed, and they get exercise, and they don't taste anything like the turkeys that you get in the grocery store. We lucked into, after we proved ourselves, we lucked into a bird that was thought to have gone extinct, and that is a Beltsville small white turkey. And that turkey was the preferred table bird in the entire United States until the industrialization of livestock and poultry. And we're actually, right now, we have a bunch of little ones who just hatched out yesterday, and they're starting to run around and be very perky and very happy, and we're looking forward to having quite a few more because we only have 14 hens and 2 toms. So we really need to increase our flock size before we take any of them to slaughter. Then we lucked into, for land clearing purposes predominantly, some myotonic goats. Does anyone know what myotonia is?
Is that the one that?
Yes. Their other name is Tennessee fainting goat, and yes, they do when they're startled. And the little ones are more prone to the paralyzation and falling over. As they get more adult, they kind of go, oh, humans, please. You don't need to clap at me. I'm not going to fall over. So at this point, have I forgotten anything, Dugan? We have a lot of different types of livestock on our farm. And as you might expect, we sort of have to specialize a little bit. So Dugan is more of our cattle person and a partial poultry person. And I am the pig whisperer and also a poultry person. I never dreamed in my wildest. Having done at the vet college when I was a senior in high school, there was a pregnant sow whose babies needed to be in a sterile environment to test out some new procedures. That was the closest I'd been to a pig until we got our pigs from Craig Floyd. And I have absolute respect and love for those creatures, and they are the most amazingly exciting animals on the face of the earth, I think. We decided as well that rather than go for an organic certification, we would go for a humane certification. So that entails each different animal has an application that's about this thick when you're starting off. Now that we've been certified humane for 5 years, I think, 5 years, the process has become more streamlined because the vet who comes to do all of the inspections knows us, knows that we're doing things correctly, and it's a little bit faster than it used to be, but it still takes a day and a half for the vet to do all of the certifications for us. And we decided that,
I think it's fair to say the typical inspection is 2 to 3 hours. We have so many different breeds in so many places that she's there for a day and a half, and it used to be 2 days.
Yeah.
So it is a long and in-depth, boots on the ground, going through every piece of paperwork, every feed tag, every building, every registry, every log of every herd and every breed for 2 days. It's a big deal.
yes, that is a current part of farming, and probably for dairy farms, it was always part of the process, was keeping the records. And we have a cattle book, a pig book, a poultry book. And everything that happens on a daily basis goes into those books and are available for the Humane Certifier to peruse. We have to, when any animals are kept in a coop type situation at night, we have to show the ammonia levels in the coop so that they don't exceed what is good for the animals to be around. So where does all of this get us? It gets us to the fact that we have animals who rate at the top of every taste test they've ever been entered into. Their fat is unlike any fat you've ever eaten before in your life. It's actually exceedingly good for you, chock full of omega-3s and 6s. And I forgot to bring my lard handout, but we make lard. Lard is an amazing source of vitamin D, as well as omega-3s and 6s. So the fact that Crisco took over the marketplace after World War II because it was a machinery grease and they didn't know what to do with it after World War II, they decided, oh, let's market it as something that is cleaner, nicer, better than lard. And President Eisenhower had a heart attack at that point after the war, and so everyone thought they should blame it on fat. So that's also when fat began to be stripped out of animals, which is probably one of the greatest mistakes we've ever made in our farming techniques. Because without fat, there is no flavor at all. I have Stephen Schlossberg has been a client of ours at the Stonington Village Market for some time. And if you all know Stephen from his writing in The Day and The Sun and the different shoreline papers, you'll know he can be a little bit of a difficult character at times. Really? I've known him forever. I respect him immensely, but he can be a difficult guy. And he said, Beth, this pork has too much fat. And I said, no, it doesn't, Steve. It doesn't have enough fat. And without the fat, you don't have any flavor. So he did some comparisons. He had to say, darn it, you're right. And then he went and spoke with some chefs who use our Mulefoot. And they are over the moon. Dan Miser, who owns the Oyster Club, says it's the best pork he's ever eaten. Jim Blair at he's in one of the Mystic Markets, Mystic Market East, absolutely adores our pork. We had, and for flavor again, when we were just starting with the Randalls, Scott Mickelson, who was the head chef at Paragon at Foxwoods, became interested in us, and he was the first chef to buy a whole hog from us. And then he got excited about the Randalls. So he got 17 of the chefs from Foxwoods together, and Dugan brought some of our ribeyes, I think. It's been a long time ago, but at any rate. And they were cooked beautifully, and they all sat down and they said, oh my God, this is the best beef we've ever had. And they decided, though, because we couldn't show the marbling in it yet, that they could not buy it for their high rollers. Now, in the last 2 years, we have perfected our marbling technique, and it looks as good as any prime cut you can get anywhere. So are there any questions thus far from me? And then we'll turn it over to Dugan, who,
Okay.
We have one.
I have so many questions, but, tell me if I'm taking too much time. When you say that you have a technique for marbling, isn't that a matter of the pork, the pig?
oh, I'm talking more, the pork, there's never been any problem with
Oh, when
marbling
the-
in
with
the
the
pork.
cattle.
I'm talking about the beef. And beef, when it's grass-fed, grass-finished, which ours is, there can be a lot of difficulty in getting the marbling.
I can
But
You're talking about
the fat that goes through the meat. Ah, that's kind of a trade secret.
Well, no. I can filter
Yes.
fast.
Okay.
So marbleization in beef. And so number one, it's typically done in a feedlot where they finish, and we call them finishing lots or feedlots. Finishing is the long lost art of farming. Everyone just takes animals from pasture and throws them at the butcher. We don't. Most animals that you get are still juveniles. Ours are not. Ours are fully mature, sexually reproductive animals. Why? Because the lost ingredient is time. Time to metabolize, time to collect different essential fatty acids from the food that they eat that are in exceptionally limited quantities that take a long metabolic time to get into the fat. So you can't make this instant. This is the true art of slow food. Finishing or marbling doesn't happen in a finish lot. If the animal is not raised appropriately, starting from the first 72 hours of birth with the appropriate amount of butter fat from the dam, it will never deposit the cell structure that will allow for intermuscular fat when it matures for us at 5 years of age. Finishing happens from day one, and to get it to mature, the last, on grass, 6 months of life have to have a caloric excess to allow those cells to swell. That keeps all of our trade secrets behind closed doors, but allows the metabolic process and development that you can't just take an animal and feed it too much and expect it to finish appropriately. They will get what you will see as a thick slab of fat around the outside. It's called a cap, but it won't be inside the muscle. That intermuscular fat is a slow metabolic process. It's the first one to be metabolized and the last one to be deposited, because a hard-working muscle requires fat in close proximity so that when it's burning hard and working hard, there's energy nearby. Most of the energy doesn't come through the blood. It was pre-stored, stored either as fast action as glycogen, which is a sweet flavor, or slow release as fat. That's finishing in a nutshell. Okay.
And that's what gives us our flavor.
So I'm the nerd, if you guys hadn't guessed. Shall I grab a
right
few?
ahead.
So,
Unless Lee wanted to
Yeah,
ask a
unless you
few
wanna
more
ask some more
no,
questions.
I had questions about why you started this, why you, as a young person, decided to be in this business.
Actually, since we've gotten into the finishing, and you heard grass-fed, grass-finished, the grass-finished is the most important aspect of our beef. And that is because ruminants are supposed to be alkaline systems. When they go into feedlots and they're fed corn, they become an acid system. When they become an acid system, any and all bacteria they pick up is totally and absolutely transmissible to humans, because we are acid-based creatures. So when they stay alkaline, you don't get the E. coli recalls that you get when they have become acid-based in a feedlot. And then we'll turn it over to Dugan.
okay. So to answer your question rapidly, why did I start farming when my background base is economics and research and development for oil and gas companies? That's where I got my start. Lot better money there, lot better notoriety.
Doesn't taste as good.
Doesn't taste as good, but it does make the world go round. I left oil and gas, not because I didn't like that job. Probably the coolest job besides this one I've ever had. The hours were miserable. I didn't like the climate, not the environmental climate, the social climate of where I was. And it's just too fast-paced, too showy, too flashy, too boozy, and that's not me. So the reason I fell to farming, well, one, my father was ill. Two, this was a conscious choice to find a profession that I could embark on where I had access to family. I grew up far away from my grandparents. I wanted to be near my parents when and if I was fortunate to have children. I wanted a job where, when I was young, I thought, by God, if I have a degree, so too shall my wife, and she's going to have a job. Then I dated a couple of women with children and started realizing, you know what? There's probably not a job better in the world than being a stay-at-home mom. And I ended up becoming jealous of the wife I didn't have for the kids that I didn't have that she was raising for me. And why was I in the office all day long and not with the kids? And I'd leave before they woke up and come back. This is all the stuff I don't have, by the way. And this is all this in thought process. And so I went through all the different professions that were available and finally came down that farming was one of the few professions that I could have where I worked from home, well, outside the home, but there. I was available at any time for kids, and because farming's 24 hours, it doesn't really matter when I'm there and when I'm not there. If there's a soccer game or a ballet game or whatever, I can go. You know, you just plan the animals around it. So I chose agriculture because it's one of the few professions where I got to be a dad, if that ever came to pass. So I chose it through a logical path, not based on finance, but based on lifestyle. And it was all for the opportunity that I might have a family at some point.
How did you convince your mom to be involved in that?
Oh, really easy. A tree fell on me. And it was super, super easy. We had an ice storm, 2011, and I was clearing the widowmakers, the twisted tops from the ice storm that came through, and was cutting this tree over here, and that tree dropped a widowmaker on me, and I was in hospital with a leg turned around backwards and steel plates and pins and all that, and well, here you go, Mom, there's 12 pigs, take care of them, because I can't. So that's how I got her into farming. There was no other option.
It's not exactly accurate, but whatever.
I would also like, not everyone knows that you are a lawyer too, Beth.
Yes.
You could have done any number of things, but you chose to do
This
this.
is a heck of a lot more fun than sitting in an office all day in front of a computer with people who didn't plan ahead, who expect you to solve their problems when there's oftentimes not any way you can solve their problems. So this is a lot more fun. And animals are much more appreciative of what I do for them than most humans.
So I want to divert this monologue a little bit to go back to what the name of tonight's program is, which is Food for Thought. We are food providers. Now I need to inspire you with some thought, because there's a few things coming into the world that I consider grave threats to agriculture. One of them is the meatless meat, the vegetarian meat, which is a really cool product when you stop to think about it. Except, and we'll go into the except. So what they're developing right now is vegetable proteins that have the same protein structure as actual animal protein derived. And it's to get the spongy texture. They figured out ways to chemically cause it to wind itself up. It's built predominantly out of pea powders and things like that that we can put into a machine and massage, and through the magic of chemistry and science turn into a synthetic faux meat. Way the heck better than the textured vegetable protein soy-based stuff. But why do I feel like this is not a good thing? And this will go into why you should embrace stock farmers and know the stock farmer. Conventional agriculture tillage agriculture, which is predominantly monocrop GMO agriculture, is highly destructive to the environment. Why and how? Well, we donate a couple of million tons of topsoil every year to runoff from rain that falls after we till our fields. Okay, fine, so who cares about that? No big deal, it just goes into the Gulf. If we can go with that being not a problem, we go to the next bit. As soon as we start cutting through the surface structure of soil, that lovely fresh tilled earth smell is death. It is the death of the soil structure. It is the death of the fungi and the soil bacteria. That lovely tilled compost smell is bad. It's rotting corpses, just micro rotting corpses you can't see. It also destroys a product called glomalin, which was the lost protein in soil that we were unable to find for centuries, but knew it was there whenever we did our oven tests on soil. So, why does this have anything to do with vat formed fake meat? Every product that goes into the fake meat is actual food. So the biggest problem people have with conventional livestock ag is we take food to feed to an animal, to make food, to feed to a human. It's inefficient. It is just as inefficient to take food that we can feed to a human to put inside a machine to make food. Now, okay, fine, I'll go with the fact that really we didn't remove any energy from this, we just transformed the form. However, we're using the regular food crops, so we haven't gained anything, we've just made someone feel better about what they're eating. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It certainly is when we start making up rules about methane farts for cows and things like that and putting catalytic converters on the back of cows in California and people bringing out metrics as to how cows are ruining the world. This is a really big topic right now. Cows are ruining the world when you feed cows inappropriate food like Beth spoke about. All of the data and the metrics that come from the methane production of agriculture come from intensive ag or finished lots, which is the easiest place to go measure cows. Why? Because they're stuck in a pen. They're fed things that are not appropriate, and they are producing large point sources, toxic waste, large amounts of methane, and they are consuming a huge quantity of food that should go for humans. Corn and soybeans are human food, let's just be honest. However, grass is not human food. And there is more land in America that can be grazed than there is any land in America that can be tilled. We have the ability in our farms, and we do it on our farm, and have the metrics from university soil studies to prove that I can sequester 1,700 tons of CO2 per acre per year, and we run 200 cows. You can do that and you can expand it and start showing that, sure, conventional ag with big tractors on lots of spaces that are ruining an environment and soil runoff with lots of bad fertilizers to make things that should be human food, to go into a cow that takes 36,000 calories of food to make 1 pound of cow, right, well that's 36,000 calories of corn that should never have been produced. That's being produced with government subsidies from your tax dollars for less than the cost of sale. Okay, so grass is free. It's incredible. It grows outside. You just put water on it. Grass is free. Cows that eat 36,000 calories of grass to make 1 pound of beef have just turned 36,000 calories of stuff that you could not hope to eat into something that you can eat. And at the same time, they're putting away, oh, Jesus, we have 60 acres of hayfield that we've been doing these studies on with 200 cows, 1,700 tons. Oh, I don't know, 40 to 50 tons of carbon dioxide per cow per year stuck in the soil. I mean, come on. This is why it's important. So what kind of agriculture for what kind of farm is important if you are concerned about the environment and you're thinking that cows fart and we shouldn't eat them? Well, no, the thing is, cows don't fart enough because people aren't growing them the right way, so we need to get more cows because honestly, if we start appropriate agriculture, the kind of cattle farming we do, which is super, super cool, goes by 100,000 names of people trying to make a name for themselves to become famous, but the concept is cows eating grass, which is nutritionally appropriate, moved at a time space for the grass that is appropriate for the grass's growth cycle and recoveries, meaning wildebeest, buffaloes, Serengeti animals, do they sit in one spot all day long and eat? No, that's modern man trying to control an environment. Wild animals come, trample, move, and they don't come back. So we synthesize that on the farm, and through doing it on the farm in a controlled environment, we can actually overclock the farm. We can get more productivity out of it. Average hay farmer might get 3-4 cuts in a year. I can get 8 cuts with cows. So if,
I have a question.
sure,
We've all probably read articles where it says that cattle, for one, take too much land. And that's one of the reasons we shouldn't want beef.
sure. Too much land. What's too much land?
Oh, well, I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right. So here's a question, right? So what's too much land? And then what we have to say too is, all right, if that land is better suited, so if we talk about, this is the town hall version of highest and best use, right? So you're gonna transfer a piece of land into something and we gotta value it based on the highest best use, which is a subdivision or a high rise or something like that. Well, if we're talking pure agricultural land, highest and best use would probably be a tillage crop of some sort that we can get a lot of money for. Around in Connecticut, the highest and best use would be tobacco. That's the highest tax bracket we have on it. That's not necessarily a good food crop, but if we're going for land valuation, that would be tillable A. Cows don't need tillable A. They can do pasture F. Cows can be on 100% grade covered in rocks. Doesn't need to be clear and stone picked. Why? Because the cow can walk around the rocks. It's okay. So we can use the worst, most god-awful, hilly, ravine-y, craggy piece of junk land out there that can't do anything, and I can put 1,500 tons of carbon per year into that soil by growing grass on it and appropriately grazing it with cows. You want to solve global warming, you want to solve CO2 in the atmosphere, one, convince people who are growing your food crops to go to a no-till method, because when we stir that soil, we're breaking everything. No-till at least doesn't ruin the surface structure so we don't get the runoff. Two, take your scrub lands, all of your pasture Fs, and you turn that into appropriately rotationally grazed livestock. This is not a new concept. There was a small poem written by a Scotsman in about 1500 that they didn't have good fencing back then, but he said that any pasture that could be suitably divided such that the animals were in one position only long enough to eat what they needed and to move to allow the land to recover, they would be able to produce what a family would need. Now this is close to 500 years ago. 800 years ago, they were paying taxes based on the productivity of cows in Ireland, based on how big their hearts were. We've done nothing in livestock agriculture but go backwards because we tried to outthink the system and specialize in one thing, specialize in milk production, specialize in beef production. Cows are generalists. The more you start rounding them out to a general animal, the better off they are, and they actually will outproduce in all metrics. A dairy cow, right now we just broke the world record, and I think we hit through 40,000 pounds of milk produced, 20 tons of milk from one cow in one lactation, typically 9 months. It's absolutely ridiculous. A beef cow, which produces only about 4,000 pounds of milk, on a per year basis produces more butterfat. Well, we buy milk based on butterfat. So what's the point of this like racehorse that's not doing something? It's making white water. Now, that is opinion me. Population 1, right? So take that for what it is. But we have so screwed up modern agriculture by trying to make names for ourselves and become the person who gets known for this one amazing product, the one bull who weighs 5,000 pounds, the one cow that makes 40,000 pounds of milk, the one stag who can pull, who knows, 10 tons on a sled at the fair. These are not good animals, and when you start looking at their bodies, they're not right. Those little old-fashioned cows are a third the size of a modern Holstein. If I put one Holstein that weighed the same amount of them next to that cow, and I took the other 3 cows of mine that it would take to be the same weight, but for volume, I will outproduce them on the butter, the proteins and the butter fats with my 3 little ones. I will also undereat that Holstein. 3,000 pounds of Holstein, 3,000 pounds of Randall. They will eat less. Smaller frames are more efficient. So these big animals are not actually doing us any favors. They're there because it wins at the coffee shop and it wins at the show ring. Our style of farming isn't based on the chest thumping. It's sort of like the way I became a farmer was based on a very careful system of logic for what worked. The animals and the ones that we chose for raising were based on that same system of logic to work in a system that's been around for thousands of years. We're not doing something new, we're doing something old. We're regenerative and restorative agriculture.
I'm going to interrupt him for just 1 second. I am 68 years old. I grew up around cattle. I grew up around steers. I had not been close to them for almost, 40 years. I am generally the one who takes the animals to the abattoir. The first time I encountered a dairy Holstein at the abattoir, I could not believe how the breed had changed since I was a child. The shoulder was actually taller than I am, and I am 5'9", and the shoulder of that Holstein was taller than me. It was all legs. That's how, when I was kind of talking about breeding for a specific trait that skews everything, these animals have been modified so that they can live in an extremely dirty environment, and those long legs keep them above all the filth that they'd normally live in. So it's, and our little guys, no, they get rotationally grazed, so they don't have to be in their own filth. And so their little short legs and their little barrel bodies are just perfect for what we're doing with them.
Do you, now, another question, and please jump in.
Yeah, guys,
I really
please.
don't want to take, time, but do you also use do you use some of the milk?
No.
You don't?
We only use the milk for the calves.
Yep.
That's the only purpose.
We
Okay.
don't wean. That's a traumatic experience for both mom and baby. We don't separate them into different pastures. And if it's a heifer and she's born, she'll be with her mom until the day her mom passes away of old age in our pasture. The steers live whole lives with the animals until we finally have enough of a waiting list that they'll go to market. We're not just, not proactively, but just, okay, it's time, whatever, we got too many animals, off they go. They live their lives as animals in the environment that they're raised, and they're never in barns unless for some odd reason someone has a condition or a season that forces that something is out of kilter. Otherwise, we've chosen animals that were adapted for outside.
Right, and we did when we were going for our initial Humane Certification, it gave them a little bit of concern. But then when they read about the breed history and that the breed was intended to be outdoors year-round in Vermont, where the climate is a little bit more harsh than ours, they said, okay, so just so long as you have a structure where if there were a 3-day blizzard that you could get them out of the blizzard, then that will work. And our animals when we do have winter calves, which is not ideal, but every once in a while it happens, we do have a barn available for the mothers and the babies because the environment's a little too harsh for the babies in midwinter.
So, I don't know anything about animals in general, but in other words, do cows generally have their calves at a certain time?
Yes,
Yes?
they should be calving in sync with nature, but for a few minor exceptions, they calve at the same time the deers have their fawns.
Oh, interesting.
So true spring. So when there's snow on the ground, no. And the reason being is sort of when we talked about biologically appropriate foods or nutritionally sound foods that are right for the animal, the food that's right for the calf is 3 months of mom being on the best nutrition available. Oddly enough, as soon as it warms up, we get spring flush. You notice that you're mowing your lawn every other day because it's growing like crazy. Well, when that flush starts is the beginning of third trimester. Third trimester is when most of the growth of the fetus occurs. Humans, cows, it's all the same. So the peak nutritional demand for the calf inside mom is in third trimester, which happens when the grass first starts to grow so that it can get appropriate nutrition, not on stored fat from her back and just whatever meager scraps she could find in the natural world. So yeah, about now in this June time, after we've had a couple of months of really beautiful grass, is when babies are born. It's nice, it's soft, it's warm, they land on a thick, lush grass carpet. Oh, and they're born with a spring coat. Their hair is maybe half an inch long. It's kind of silly to have them born in the winter time. They don't have a winter coat. So yes, there is a time when calves are born.
And I last year, you could stay overnight with the cows. And I couldn't go this year, but you're doing it this year again.
We do it and the first full moon after we're certain that all calves will be born. And this year it's August 17th will be the date for the Campout with the cows. And it's
I'm gonna
really,
do it
it's
this
really
year.
quite fun. People
Just
bring.
the idea of it makes me feel good.
Well, the first time my daughter spent the night out with the cow, she said, "My God, they eat all night long and they're noisy." But it's really,
What's wrong
really
with that?
great fun.
That sounds
It is
good.
great fun to do the camp out.
So if you've never met a cow, it's a wonderful time because cows are not, I don't know what your stereotype is. I'll just tell you right now, it's wrong. And it doesn't matter what it is, because if your image of a cow is not a Zen master, the most grounded and happy, calm creature in the world, whatever that image you have of a cow is, whether it's Ferdinand the bull or something, it's wrong. Because you can have had a bad day, you can be stressed out, you can be heartbroken. We all know you go home to your dog and your dog gives you those nice puppy dog eyes and leans on you and will just sort of sympathize with you. A cow will fix you. That's the awesome part. You go with them and they are so calm, so grounded, and if they're pregnant, so content that all of your anxiety energy just dissipates. And that's why I actually changed my greatest love from pigs, because they are unbelievably intelligent and just active and curious and incredible conversationalists. Yes, pigs talk, and they have a very complex language. But cows are calm. More than anything else, cows are calm, and they are so happy to just be. And so when you bring them into a new pasture, and they'll frolic and be excited. They're noisy when they're hungry and hangry, and you bring them in, and all of a sudden the world is quiet, and they are content, and all you hear is just this ripping of the grass. And about 3 weeks ago, the cows were mowing my lawn, and it just happened to be that the situation, the water in the ground was just right, that I heard the subterranean tremors of cow grazing. And it is this basso profundo that just comes through the foundation, and you can hear them grazing like a quarter mile away. It is the most incredible thing. So I guess at that, questions?
Can people go to the farm and observe the animals, or just go and like visit, or only like at certain times, or?
We have lots of projects going on at all times, so we request that you call ahead to make certain that it will work, which does not say that people haven't arrived unannounced and we've worked with them, but it's much easier for us if you call ahead.
The answer to your question is yes.
If you pick this up, you'll find phone numbers and email and all of that on the bottom. And aside from the website, we also have a Facebook page, which stays very, very, very current. In fact, the first picture of the first calf born in the spring has been posted now. We wait. We don't post immediately because things can go wrong. And we don't want people to decide that they love this one little animal, and then when it disappears, they get very unhappy. At the last Campout, we had a young heifer who had probably been stepped on when the herd was moving. And she had a foot that she was limping on horribly. And so the vet, our large animal vet, usually comes to the Campout with his daughter and a couple of her friends. And so we had him bring out his portable x-ray machine and do a whole examination of her foot at the Campout, which was a lot of fun for everyone. It was a lot of fun. Well, she got the name Betty Moonshine. The whole group decided that was going to be her name. I still get emails from people saying, so how is Betty Moonshine? Well, she's doing fine. Her foot healed. Everything's good in that world.
And I think we have to close.
And yes, and I also want to tell you that you have not tasted a pie made with lard and butter. You have not tasted it better than that. But not the stuff at the supermarket. Camping. I get them from you.
Yes.
Yes, I do. And it's expensive, but what a pie.
Thank you, guys.